Hello, beauties. I'm sure that if I asked any of you right now to name some broken or overpowered anime characters, at least 5 names would quickly come to your mind. What if I asked you to name characters who maximize their abilities, making them seem overpowered? Not as many would come to mind, and that's more or less what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try to draw a line between characters who use their abilities to become incredibly powerful and those who are just plain broken. They will be ultra powerful for no apparent reason, regardless of their actions. Let me explain what a broken character means to me. In my opinion, a broken character is one who will always be the most powerful in their series. It doesn't matter if they put in more or less effort, because the script always gives them senseless power-ups. Combined with exaggerated plot armor when it's convenient, and even nerfing their rivals in the most infamous cases, just so the guy looks as badass and powerful as possible. Cases that come to mind are, for example, Jotaro from JoJo's and Juno from Black Clover, Naruto and Sasuke from the anime about Boruto's father, Escanor from the anime Fato, or that Mereoleona from Hunter x Hunter, and of course, Kirito. These are just a few examples, but let me clarify something up front. A character being overpowered doesn't necessarily make them a bad character. Avoid connecting unrelated concepts even if they appear related. Overpowered characters can be seen negatively when unjustified by the story, but positively when the narrative supports their strength. Meruem, Escanor, and to a lesser extent, Juno, are justified. Meruem is the pinnacle of evolution and the highest representative of his race. Being overpowered is essential to his narrative. A weak character would undermine the story. Escanor embodies the sin of pride, one who faces difficulties head-on, never retreats, and would sooner perish than concede defeat. He embodies the sun itself, so the character naturally makes sense. Juno has countless facets. Yeah, unlike the other two, I don't like this one as much. His justification seems super weak to me. He's the son of important kings and has some talent, but I'm not sure what it is. He's either the chosen one of the spirit of air or the reincarnation of the unborn son of the ancient elven king, who possesses incomparable power. All that remains is for the spirit that chose him to fall in love with. Oh, never mind. That actually happens. It's justified, but unlike the others, here the character feels much more artificial. These cases are acceptable to me, Naruto and Sasuke, I guess, as well. But they say it so late that, honestly, it feels more like a last-minute justification. Even if it isn't, then a solid justification. His reincarnation as Ashura and Indra doesn't resolve the issue for me. Naruto and Sasuke stopped exerting much effort early in Shippuden. Sasuke nearly stopped trying after leaving Orochimaru's base. And from then on, he started getting showered with gifted powers and alliances that made no sense for the other side. Like in the case of Obito, which was the biggest nonsense and the stupidest decision. By far, the decisions this character made, the avalanche of power-ups and ridiculous plot armor he got after the fight with his brother, were out of this world. You know, I love the character and even made a video defending him. But you can't ignore the obvious, can you? Sasuke crashed the meeting of the 5 Kages, thinking he was all that, and came out alive. He escaped with only minor injuries, while the Raikage lost an arm. Yes, with Obito's help. But we're back to the same old thing. Obito's obsession with protecting Sasuke when he got nothing out of it. And don't come at me with the whole cultivating powerful eyes thing, because Sasuke's eyes were already more worn out from overuse than the animation in Black Clover. Moreover, he later gave him Itachi's eyes, which seemed strange. Let's not get into that topic. Naruto also had his problems, though not as bad. Once the pain arc was over and Naruto unlocked Kurama's chakra, things changed quite a bit too. Yeah, obviously there wasn't time to practice or anything like that, but the thing is Naruto started going from one power-up to another. With Kurama's chakra, we become friends and advance to Kurama's level 2 cloak. What if now my father gives me his other half of Kurama and I become super powerful? Now I combine it with Sage Mode. Now they give me a ridiculously powerful Sage Mode with truth-seeking balls included and a badass staff. That's how it was. I'm not making anything up, not exaggerating or anything like that. On the other side of the coin, we have the unjustified cases, or those justified so poorly that it would be better if they weren't justified at all. Here we have the archetypical Gary Stu and Mary Sue, terms that are often misused today. Any character slightly above the average power scale of their series is now called a Gary Stu. No, a Gary Stu is not someone with maxed out attributes. Rather, it's a character whose traits are all taken to the extreme. As if it were a role-playing game, including luck, obviously, because everything always goes well for a Gary Stu. That's why Gatsu can't fit this definition no matter how strong he is. Or, in quotes, no matter how much plot armor he has. Everything goes wrong for him to the point where his bad luck seems exaggerated, no matter how much they say he's cursed from birth. Though that was always more metaphorical. The Gary Stew is also usually the author's self-insert, and although not all self-inserts are Gary Stew, 90% of them are. Here we have the cases I mentioned before. Jotaro, for being a guy who always gets everything right no matter what problem he faces. It doesn't matter if he's a 17-year-old facing an immortal vampire in his grandfather's body, along with a golden guy who can stop time. Jotaro's going to find a way to win. In a normal scenario, he would be doomed. With no power-ups, insanity, or luck, it would be impossible. Despite his misfortunes, Itachi has more traits of an overpowered character and a Gary Stew, mainly because the work itself constantly exaggerates it. Do you know that infamous scene where it's said that he thinks like a Hokage at 5 or 6 years old? And let's remember the thing with Kabuto, which you could have expected because in mythology, Izanagi and Izanami are a couple. And if you saw someone use a technique named after one of them, could you expect that the sister technique existed? The issue stems from the ease of this method's impact. I'm also a big fan of Itachi, but if we took away all his backstory, well, the character would end up looking pretty bad. Yes, I'm one of those who actually thinks that. Despite Itachi's intelligence, power, talent, and capabilities, he had a life filled with misfortune, pain, and illness. That makes him an incredible character, in part. And yes, if he weren't so powerful, the character wouldn't work. Because being overpowered doesn't make a character bad. And you have to remember this because it's very important. Lately, there's been a strange trend of hating overpowered characters just because they're overpowered. And you have to understand that many times, entire arcs or storylines depend on that character being that powerful. Can you imagine if Omni-Man from Invincible had the power of an average Earth hero? So that's it. You shouldn't always associate an overpowered character with a bad character. What there are overpowered characters that are well written and poorly written. So then what would be a bad example of an overpowered character? Gary Stew, the typical example, is Kirito. Though frequently mentioned, he's the quintessential Gary Stew. Self-insertion turned into a character, pixel by pixel. Obviously, it's not just him. Many protagonists in isekai and similar generic anime are like that. Kirito is just the most well-known example. This scene has been parodied in many works, such as the Nagatoro manga, where the author, through Nagatoro, clearly criticized other manga artists. Who creates these self-insert characters that are extremely cool versions of themselves? It's rather pathetic. Well then, do you already know what kind of person goes around on social media thinking they are Kirito? They're bland characters, without charisma, clones, and their only appeal is that they're overpowered and have a very diverse harem of girls, aren't they? Kirito isn't justified because I remember that in the video I made back in the day about Kirito, people told me that Kirito's abilities were justified because he was a hardcore, massively multiplayer online role-playing game player before entering Sword Art Online. And have you ever stopped to think about the differences between playing a game from your chair with a can of Monster and a bag of Doritos next to you and playing it in virtual reality? Totally, to the point where your real body is in a coma. And literally, you can die in real life if you lose in the game. I mean, are you seriously comparing that? Okay, it's like you're telling me that someone, just because they've played a lot of Call of Duty, could be put into a virtual reality game. Totally. As if it were real-life war where you could actually die. And, of course, since he's played a lot of Call of Duty, I guess he'll get all the kill streaks. Without dying, right? What is dying compared to a victory royale in Fortnite? This is absurd and shows that there are people who, honestly, with all due respect, just don't use much logic and believe any lame excuse, no matter how dumb it is. The conclusion seems simple so far. A broken character can be compelling if well justified and developed, but terrible if they're broken merely for the sake of appearing cool. Without a coherent and well-argued justification, or that helps the narrative of the series, you could say that we've already drawn the line we were looking for, but no. Now come the cases that complicate this division. I want to talk about 4 characters, not because they're the only ones, but to have varied examples from specific groups, which are Mereoleona, Asta, Deku, and Perfect Freezer. Prepare for the inevitable bullying in the comments for discussing Freezer yet again on this channel. If only I knew more than 10 characters, this would be a lot easier. Mereoleona Vermillon would come to represent all those powerful characters, who, although they are well justified. The lack of a detailed training arc for the character makes her sudden overpowered abilities seem unearned. Mereoleona exemplifies a character who maximized her potential. The first reason is because she comes from a lineage of extremely powerful and talented mages, which is always helpful. Since childhood, she has dedicated her life to training, spending days purposefully lost in the forest to become stronger and wilder. She's a blend of talent, attitude, and passion for combat. A Netero-style flashback from Hunter x Hunter would have elevated her character. I wouldn't have to hear people say that Mereoleona is a female Yotaro and other horrible nonsense like that about Mereoleona. She's just awesome. Asta and Deku are similar cases, although with some differences that set them apart. The script itself does not make either of them overpowered, at least not as people commonly believe. With Deku, I need to make a small parenthesis in case someone is new to the channel, and I have to say that at the time I'm recording this, I've just started the 4th season, so I don't know if maybe when I'm caught up. It turns out that Deku is now a Super Saiyan. 5 Kaioken times 100 with the 10 tails, Gensho Atensho, King's Haki, Giorno's stand, and Yujiro Hanma's genes. If my opinion changes in the future, which is very possible because of some minor spoilers I have, I'll say it openly. Alright, it's often said that these guys have overpowered abilities handed to them, and that makes them bad characters. Because of course the plot has given them everything. I guess these same people would also be bothered that Luffy is the only one in his anime who really makes use of his fruit, with super exaggerated powers for a rubber fruit. Most only use basic Akuma no Mi abilities, right? Some say Asta is overpowered due to his anti-magic sword. And of course, anti-magic in a world of magic? When told Asta's anti-magic is overpowered because he's in a world of mages, automatically agree. It's likely that person didn't get past the first 7 chapters. Because everyone who's up to date knows, first of all, Asta has trained harder than anyone else. In fact, most characters improve their skills with simple practice sessions that you couldn't even call training. Since Asta is constantly surrounded by extremely talented guys who just fart and become twice as strong. Point 2. Asta has no other way to fight. He's just an ordinary guy who lacks magical power. Asta's sword, which has its own power, is essential to the anime's plot, not just a character ability. Point 3. Would you do it better? I mean, it sounds pretty strong to say anti-magic or pee in a world of magic. But here we lose sight of the fact that what Asta has is just a piece of metal that undoes magic. Against guys who make fire genkadamas, summon giant golems, and create 50 square meter forests, who create alternate dimensions, open space-time portals, and summon legendary spirits that enhance their combat abilities. If you were in the world of Black Clover, the worst power you could have is anti-magic. Because it requires such inhuman physical training that almost no one would be able to endure it. If I gave you the choice between being a guy with a 15-meter salamander that spits giant flames, he can set everything ablaze as he goes, causing massive explosions. He is a weapon of mass destruction himself. Being a teenager with a metal that undoes magic? You'd have to be a little crazy to choose that option. Anti-magic would be broken if it could be used like telekinesis or something like that. Like Izawa from My Hero Academia, who can cancel your quirk just by looking at you. To wield Asta's sword, you must have surpassed the limits of an ordinary human. Asta's power is earned through hard work, not innate abilities. On the other hand, Deku was given One for All, the most powerful quirk in the world, which might sound really nice at first glance. What nobody tells you is that practically no one can use it. Where am I going with this? Every time Deku launches an attack with One for All, he destroys himself. And if you told me that this at least guarantees him victory, I would accept that he's overpowered, but no, throwing a punch with One for All doesn't guarantee him anything. Now he's using some kind of controlled state of One for All, which isn't a big deal. Characters like Bakugo, Todoroki, Tokoyami, and many more. Do they have quirks that are more interesting than One for All? First of all, yes, the power of One for All is beastly, but the user has to be up to the level. And even though Deku tries really hard, he still can't use One for All with enough power to feel like he's superior to his classmates. Again, Deku is working harder than anyone, so that his level isn't overwhelmingly higher than everyone else's. This doesn't even account for the immense pressure and responsibility of wielding One for All. If you ask me, One for All is more of a curse than a blessing because it forces you to live for One for All itself. To be able to control it completely and fulfill the destiny of defeating All for One and saving as many people as possible. And finally, there's the case of Freezer. This is the kind of character that ruins any line we could draw and makes everything very subjective. The massive power boost Freezer attained in Super to achieve the Golden State was attributed to his complete lack of training throughout his life. It was a unique and unrepeatable talent, born with the power to conquer the entire universe, without needing to train a single day. That's the given explanation, but two things don't add up. Freezer was very powerful. Yes, but in just 4 months, to get close to the level of the gods, or at least to beginner gods, 4 months in terms of time is nothing. But well, would you still buy it if the training had been insane? But not even then. The scene depicts Freezer acting normally alongside Tagoma, his companion who survived the training, as if nothing had occurred. Which made me think that the training couldn't have been that hardcore if Tagoma survived it. Training to increase power in such a short period of time should be insane. So just because of this scene with Tagoma, I can't quite believe it completely. You might claim I'm being a hypocrite, Bills, for saying it wasn't necessary to see anything explicitly and now contradicting that. Close your YouTube account. That's exactly the problem. If they hadn't shown this scene, we would have drawn our own conclusions that he went through hellish training, worthy of the Emperor of Space. And if he had gone without Tagoma, even better, because Tagoma's presence would still make this shaky. Freezer's power-up is on the fine line. Whether it seems exaggerated or acceptable to me depends on the day you ask me. I might answer one way or another. The final conclusion is simple. Whether a character is overpowered, takes advantage of their abilities, or whatever, it doesn't matter. A character can be good or bad regardless of their power, as long as they are consistent and not too jarring. Ideally, people would stop arguing about whether this or that character is overpowered or not, or whether their powers were given to them or earned. And instead, people would talk about whether that's what the story needs, if the character plays their role well and if it's justified, or if it's a character the author added solely to have a badass in the story, or to self-insert into them, or to let the reader self-insert. Have a nice day. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow me on my social media like Twitter and Twitch, where I stream almost every day. Also, don't forget to follow me on my secondary channel, Belsatilter, where I upload videos reacting to anime or reading manga that I've watched or read live. Thank you very much and see you next time.